Howdy folks, John here. Today we're going to be looking at a very cool little computerized RC battery charger. This is the D200neo by SkyRC. It is a dual port charger. It has both AC and DC input. In AC mode, it's quite powerful at up to 200 watts as the name would suggest. And in DC mode, up to 800 watts. So very powerful little charger with a built-in power supply. I want to thank Banggood right now, so we can all have a look at the D200neo together and see if it's a charger that you might be interested in. So it comes with a little quick start guide. I highly recommend, though, downloading the full instruction manual off of SkyRC's website. I will link to that below in the description. And if this is your first computerized charger, or you don't really know what to look for in a computerized charger, don't know much about them, I've got a page on my website that covers all the features to look for in computerized chargers in detail. I will also link that below, as well as the link to Banggood for the product. And if there's any discount codes, that'll also be included below in the description. So it comes with a power cord for your specific country. So during the checkout, just make sure you select the right power cord if you decide on getting one of these things. Here in North America, we're using just the standard 2-prong, 120 volts AC. The charger itself is actually very small considering it's got a built-in power supply. You know, it's not as small as a comparable powered iCharger S6, but consider this doesn't have a built-in power supply. This does. Keep in mind though, only 200 watts with the built-in supply, and that's the limiting factor with size of any RC battery charger. And that's specifically what is so great about this little charger, is you do have those options that you can power it from AC, granted at lower power output levels, or with DC up to 800 watts. We're going to be testing out the full power output in both AC and DC to see how well it works, show you how intuitive the layout is, and we'll see how well it charges up and balances up. So first thing we got to do is get rid of this protective screen. Oh, I like that. So we'll start on the back of the little SkyRC D200neo. Got a nice big cooling exhaust fan, and we've got our two power inputs. AC, it will accept 100 to 240 volts AC, both 50 and 60 hertz, so universal voltage. And here's our DC power input, and it will accept 10 to 30 volts DC. Very important, you never have both hooked up at the same time. You either have to have it powered by DC input or AC. You can never hook both up. Magic smoke will be released. At least that's what the instructions say. So we'll just plug it into our AC here. Gives us a little warning. I'm just going to zoom in here so we can see the display a bit better. Hopefully we'll keep it out of the light glare. Okay, that's all good. So on this side we've got a USB-C port, and this is to either update firmware or use SkyRC's data logging software if you want to data log battery discharge and charge cycles graphically. The software is available on their website, and the little USB can also be used to charge USB devices. It's got up to a 20 watt 5 volt output. On the front we've got our two port inputs using XT60 inputs and up to 6S balance leads for both ports. And on the other side we've got a discharge port, and again XT60, and this is where you can use their external resistor block to discharge up to 40 amps. That is an optional accessory. Now, very intuitive user interface. If you've used any computerized charger before, you'll find this is very simple to figure out. And if you've never used a computerized charger before, just a little bit of playing around. Before we start charging, just going to go through the charge cycle. They use a nice aluminum encoder wheel, press button to make your selections, and then just one other button on it is to select between port A or port B. So you don't have to go into the menus to select between ports. You can do it just with one simple push button. So very nice in that respect. And as far as your charge settings, again, very intuitive. Battery type is the first selection that comes up. We've got our 4 different lithium chemistries, including lithium high voltage. nickel metal hydride, NiCad, and of course lead acid. But we're going to be doing a LiPo charge here. Battery cell count is automatic when you plug in your balance lead, but you can also select it manually. Task, we want to do a storage, or a balance charge rather, but you've got balance, charge, storage, discharge, and parallel. But we're going to do a balance charge, and it allows you to select your termination voltage. So 4.2 is of course the safe level for LiPo. I always charge my LiPos though a little bit lower. So we'll select 4.18, and then you can select your current. And it'll go as low as 0.2 amps, 200 milliamps, all the way up to
eventually
20 amps. And then start and back. So let's hook up our batteries. Right, we've got two 5100 milliamp 6S LiPo packs hooked up. Now, I've changed this to 10 amps just to make the math a little bit easier. We want to see if this thing actually will put out 200 watts of power. So fully charged at around 25 volts at 10 amps, 25 times 10, 250 watts. Again, the power output in AC is only 200 watts, so we will expect it not to be able to achieve that. The best it should be able to achieve is 8 amps of output, and assuming no efficiency loss. So I doubt we'll get the full 8 amps, but we'll see. So we'll hit start. Fan came on right away, and we're at 8.6 amps. Granted, the battery isn't fully charged at 25 volts yet. So very realistic, true to value power output level. It also shows all the cells, so that's nice. It shows how much capacity has gone into the pack, and it's showing it's using the full 200 watts. Very cool. Now, if you look at that RC battery charger page on my site, one of the criteria I place on battery chargers is cost per watt. And basically you just take the price of the charger and divide it by the watts. So at around $140 US, if we divide that by 200 watts, we get 70 cents per watt. And in DC format at 800 watts, we get about 18 cents per watt. So value is good. Okay, we're about 17 minutes into our charge cycle here. We're still outputting almost 200 watts, so that's very impressive. We've pumped 2,450 milliamp hours into our two cells here, and it shows the little icon. We're just at the last little bit of charging, and it also shows we're over 4 volts now per cell on each of them. Looking good. Before we come back when it's all finished, I thought I'd just fire up the main specifications. The one value that's a little bit low here that I would like to see a little bit higher is the balance charge current. It's 1.5 amps max. That's not really that bad at all. I like chargers that have 2 amp balance charging just because it will quicken the last little bit of the charge cycle when the balance load is put on the cells, bringing them all into equal balance proximity. But 1.5 amps is not bad at all. Certainly there's chargers out there with a lot lower than that will take longer to balance up. Okie dokie, we're done. 35 minutes, almost 36. Pumped in just over 4,300 milliamp hours, so 4.3 amp hours. Showing the little icon says done, and it's showing all our cell voltages sitting at 4.18 volts, which is the termination voltage we selected. Let's just check these out with a cell checker to see how accurate that is. See if we're roughly the same. 4.155, 4.189, 4.91, 4.19, 4.192, 4.181. So that's kind of odd. Balance looks to be a little bit out, unless my cell checker's out. Got a feeling my little EOS Sentry is not as accurate as it once used to be. So we're going to check this out on the good old fluke. So cell 1, 4.17, cell 2, 4.174, cell 3, 4.173, cell 4, 4.177, cell 5, 177, 179, and cell 6, 178. So very good balanced proximity there. Keep in mind the voltage has decayed a little bit because these have been sitting for a few minutes since the charge cycle was done. So very happy with that. Let's do a dual port charge. One thing I'm not thrilled about on any of these small chargers, not just the D200neo here, is the fact that they use a dedicated plug for your power outputs instead of a 4mm banana. And if you're like me, I've got lots of charge harnesses that use 4mm bananas, paraboards with 4mm bananas. You know, I know why they do it. It's to save space. By using a plug like this, they can make the form factor as small as possible. So if you've got lots of banana harnesses like I do, you're just going to have to make up little adapters, or you can buy these. Here I've just soldered on some banana, female 4mm banana outputs to this XT60. Or you can make a little harness. This is just from an old battery that I saved the harness from, and then just put some 4mm female bananas on the end of it. Or like I said, you can buy these. So let's hook this up. And we're going to do 4 OMP M2 batteries. These are 3S 650 milliamp hours. So I'm just going to get these all hooked up, and we're also going to do 4 little OMP M1 7.4 volt. These are 2S 350 milliamp hour packs. Now I should mention you don't have to use parallel charging harnesses or boards. You can plug the packs, of course, directly into the charger, assuming they've got a XT60 plug, or you get an adapter for them. I always parallel charge. If you don't know much about parallel charging, I've got a full page on my website. I'll link to it below in the description as well if you want to find out more about it, and if it's a charging method you might want to consider. Anyway, let's start the charging on A here. And what's neat, when you hit the charge settings, you can also toggle between them. Here, let me just zoom in. We can actually see what we're doing here. So you can toggle between both ports, so port A and port B. But let's do port A first. So these are the little M1 OMP Hobby 2S 350 milliamp hour packs. So they are LiPos. Yes, it automatically selects that they're 2S because we've got the balance lead plugged in. We're going to do a balance charge. Again, I'm going to go 4.18 volts for the termination, and the current, let's do a 1C charge rate, so 1 times the capacity. These are 350 milliamp hour packs, so 350 times 4 is 1400 milliamp hours, so that's 1.4 amps. There we go. Oops, 1.3. And we're going to start. Okay, now we'll change to port B. And let's get these going. LiPo, yes. 3S, again, automatically selected it because we've got them plugged in to our balance port. 3S, and these are 650 milliamp hours. There's 4 of them. We want to do a balance charge, so 650. Oh, let's change this to 4.18. And if you're wondering why I do that, I explain it on my LiPo battery page. I don't like having my LiPo packs in a 100% charged state if I'm not going to be using them like within an hour or two. And I just feel it extends the life of the pack. Anyway, our charge current will be 650 milliamp hours times 4 is 2600 milliamp hours, so 2.6 amps. and start. So there it's showing both our different charge cycles going. One for our 2S packs, one for our 3S. Again, showing the time, wattage, and how many milliamp hours have been pumped in. It gives you the option to have both screens on at the same time, or separate screens if you want to actually look at the cell voltages. What's next? Discharge. Okay, let's just quickly see what the maximum discharge current is on one of these fully charged 6S batteries that we just charged up. I should mention, if you do use the external discharge resistor block, it's only for port A. So you can't use both ports for that. But we're just using the internal discharger here just to see what the maximum discharge current is. So we will go into our battery type. Yep. We want to discharge. Let's do storage, which will still discharge it. And I'm just going to dial this up to some huge value. It probably won't go near that. And we'll start. Yeah, 0.37 amps. So it certainly doesn't have huge internal discharge current capabilities. But I rarely discharge my batteries through my chargers. If I've got leftover packs that are fully charged from the day, I will generally just plug them into the charger power input and use them to then storage charge my packs that I did use. And that's an easy way to discharge your fully charged packs, and you're not wasting the power. You're putting it right back into your discharge packs after a day of flying or driving. Okay, the SkyRC D200neo maximum stress test here for charging power. So I've got my big 1000 watt Meanwell power supply here. So this is putting out 24 volts at 1000 watts power. So it should be enough to max this little guy out at its 800 watt rate. And as you can see, powerful power supplies are huge compared to the size of a charger. So that's why you can't have huge power output with built-in supplies. You'd need something like that. So we are going to plug this into our DC. But we're going to do 20 amps on each one. Change to B. 20 amps. And there we go, 400 watts on each one, so it's putting out the maximum 800 watts. Very impressive. We'll finish up with the D200neo RC Charger review, going into the system settings because there's some interesting ones in here that a few people might be interested in. So to access system settings menu, you just hold in the encoder wheel for a couple of seconds. And there we're into our system settings. Just go through these real quickly. Task parameters allows you to set a safety timer, max capacity before it shuts off. Trickle charge you can engage if you want, probably for lead acid. Of course, back. System settings, you've got language, maximum input power setting, minimum input voltage. You can set your backlight, select the volume of the beeps, completion signal. You can have it either once or repeat when your charge cycle or discharge cycle is finished. USB, you can have it as either data only or charge only or auto. Again, that's for the little USB output. DC power, this is cool. You can use this as a power supply, DC power supply. You can go anywhere between 5 volts and 20 volt. You can't do anything really low voltage, but for most things that RCers are doing, it's pretty cool to have this function. And you can also select the current up to 10 amps, oh no, up to what, 15 amps, all the way down to 1 amp. So 1 amp to 15 amps. And what's neat is you can select the port as well. So you can have a dual power supply output. Power for tire warmer. So this will just default to the SkyRCs. They've got a little tire warmer for RC cars, and it'll just select the correct voltage and current for that. Power HD hub, that's a USB hub that SkyRC also has. And again, it'll just select the correct voltage and current automatically to run that accessory. Battery meter, this is one of the most important features of any computerized charger as far as I'm concerned. I have a page on my website that talks about internal resistance. I will link to it below in the description, but that's what this allows you to check. Any new battery, I get the new internal resistance, so I know what it is new, and then I can gauge the battery health as the battery ages. And to check for it, really simple, you just plug your battery in to the charger, like so, and we will hit start. So it puts a little bit of a load on, and it will check the internal resistance of all the cells. We'll show the highest cell, in this case number 2. What else do we got? System self-check and factory settings. So just reverse all back to the factory default settings. And then system info, just shows you what hardware version, firmware version, and the serial number. Oh, and then we can also do the system upgrade. That's where you would update the firmware. So that, in a nutshell, is the SkyRC D200neo. Very impressive little charger. Looks great. Easy to use interface. Easy to view. Nice colors. Not harsh on the eyes. Very intuitive. And if you're looking for a fairly powerful charger, even with the small form factor and built-in power supply, not bad at all. At 200 watts, of course 800 watts if you want to use an external power supply. And I've been in the market for a little charger like this for some time. You know, I've got a fair number of RC chargers, but they all need external supplies because I charge big packs and usually parallel charge a lot of them, so I need a lot of power. But for charging small packs, it was kind of a pain dragging out a power supply every time. So now I can use this for that. And of course, I can also use it to charge R2-D2, which was getting to be a pain, having to cart both a power supply and a charger along with him, whereas I can just have this now and just plug it into a wall outlet. A couple of other little things on this I should mention. It's got nice little rubber feet on the bottom to prevent it from sliding around. And you'll see this is where the intake louvers are for the cooling. So if you have this resting on something, just make sure it's not a pad or something that is blocking those intake louvers, preventing it from exhausting the hot air that is produced in these powerful little chargers. So very cool little charger if you're in the market for something like this. Again, link is in the description. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you next time, and happy charging.